Hello, career thought leaders. We're good to see you today. We are excited to be here, and we have one of our presenters for the 2024 Symposium in Lisbon, Jake Richings, joining us. And Jake specializes in helping organizations understand how to engage young people in career conversations. So he works with career services offices as well as employers to figure out how do you get young people engaged. So if you have questions on that, let us know. Feel free to drop a note in the chat. Let us know that you're here. Let us know where you're joining us from. Jake is joining us today. It's late in the evening his time because he is in the UK. And Jake, are you outside of London? Where are you in the UK?
Yeah, thanks, Marie. Yeah, hi, everyone. Yes, I'm outside of London, near a place called Bristol, which is another one of the sort of bigger cities. But yeah, it is getting late in the evening now. It's 9 o'clock. But like I said, lovely to jump on and get to chat with you again. All things looking at engaging young people in careers and career conversations.
And one of our other speakers for the symposium is on here today, Gary. So thanks, Gary, and good to see you. You all get to meet in person. That's my favorite thing, by the way, meeting in person. So tell me a little bit about what you're seeing, why this became a passion project for you. What's going on with young people not being engaged in careers?
Yeah, so I suppose in many ways there's two separate answers to that. I mean, what we're seeing at the moment in the industry, I suppose in the workplace, is that only about 30% of Generation Z, that is, 26-year-olds all the way down to like 15, 16-year-olds, only about 30% are engaged in careers, which means that they're going out of their way to strive for promotion, they're contributing new ideas to the businesses they work for. And that means the majority of people that are my age and a bit younger aren't really that bothered. They're turning up, they're doing their job, and then they're going home, maybe not looking for that growth or development that maybe we've seen in other generations. The reason it's a passion project for me is that when I left school, I was unemployed and didn't really know what I wanted to do for about a year. And I felt like no jobs were interesting to me. I'd read through job descriptions, be a bit bored, and then say, "Oh, that career is not for me. It doesn't sound like me." Now having worked for myself for about 4 years, and had other careers in like customer service and sales and progressed quite quickly through those, I realized that actually there's so much talent out there. There's so many young people that could become, high potential, your high performers, but they're reading your job descriptions and they're bored. They think of your industry as something that's not for them, or they see the people that work in your industry and they don't sort of associate with them. And that's a huge worry. I think if you've got a talent pipeline you're trying to build and you're only recruiting from a very small percentage of people that are engaged, you're missing out on so much. And the same applies for customers of careers leaders and career coaches as well. If only 30% of people are engaged, you're missing out on 70% of people that don't know that you have an offering that can help them or don't believe that they even want to develop. And I think we can change that.
Yeah, I think this is a challenge for parents. It's also a challenge for career services offices. How do we start having these conversations with individuals? And we know that this is happening a lot on social media, specifically on TikTok. So share with me what people are learning on those types of platforms now about careers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I use TikTok as an example, but we can think more broadly about digital services and social media. But take something like TikTok, where there are over 5 billion views of hashtag career advice videos. And Maria, if you imagine that some videos are as short as like 10 seconds, where you're giving like one quick tip, that adds up to be over thousands and thousands of years of careers education that young people are just like voluntarily consuming. They're scrolling across it, they're seeing it, they're thinking, "Oh, this is interesting. I'm going to keep watching. I'm going to watch them more." So there is really an appetite there on social media for young people to pick up on careers education and career service resources. But one thing I find super interesting, and you might not know this, is that where you and I might use something like Google to ask questions, how do I do well in an interview, or how do I ask for a pay rise? Young people are asking sites like TikTok and Instagram those questions. They're going on the app, they're going on the platform, asking that question and getting video answers come up as well. So it becomes a fascinating place where actually we can put resources on there that are really engaging, but also valuable and curated and trustworthy. But I think we need a lot more qualified people to jump on the apps and those locations to meet young people where they are.
Yeah, yeah.
Huge appetite.
Well, and it's a sad thing, I think, because there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of distrust. But TikTok surpassed Google as the top search engine last year, and I'm sure it didn't falter too much this year because of its popularity. And I was doing some research before our conversation, and they said that 2/3 of individuals 18 to 24 trust information that they find on social media about careers. And then it drops a little bit for people that are 25 to 34, but still 50% of people in that age group are trusting social media for their career advice. So if we're not posting on career sites and specifically things that are really popular like TikTok, maybe Instagram, then where are they going to get the advice except for people that aren't giving good advice? So, it's kind of a catch-22. We've got to get out there. Now, I know you started a project to get more people on TikTok. And I would just say that if you are watching and you're a career services provider and you're on TikTok, drop your handle so that Jake could find you there and add you to his list, because you've got, what, a goal of 1,000 career professionals?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it started off really, I think a couple of years ago, where I just did a little workshop. People kept asking me, how am I using TikTok to engage young people in career conversations, the sort of place where I was sharing my story, sharing some insight into stuff that was useful for me, just from that perspective, really. So it started off as a workshop for 12 people, and now it's sort of grown into this mission of, can we get 1,000 qualified career professionals on sites like TikTok? Because as you mentioned, there's so much information out there that people are searching for, but how do we make sure that's trustworthy? And also, how do we raise the bar for how valuable content could be? So yeah, I've got 1,000 people that I need to get on there. And I suppose if you're the type of person that maybe thinks that, oh, I'm not sure if TikTok is for me, or video content, that kind of presenting, so many people I've seen in my comments and seen messaging me have had the exact same thing, where they said, I'm not sure, but maybe I'm going to try it out. Even if they were just doing voiceovers or creating stuff that didn't have their face on it. And the speed at which they've quickly picked up the sort of video creation resources and the value that their viewers, their listeners are getting has been overwhelming. I mean, some of the people that have joined on in a whim almost and said, like, I'll give it a go, have got hundreds and thousands of people watching their content saying, thank you for sharing this. This is really useful. And imagine if you've got a service that you can provide on the end of that. If you're a trustworthy career service provider, then you've just created a massive engagement pipeline that you can really use to help a lot of people.
Well, and I think the false belief on our part sometimes is that my audience isn't there. But it's not just young people that are there either, right? I mean, everybody's there.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, like I said, the stats at the moment, or certainly the latest ones I viewed, are that 50% of the audience on TikTok, for example, are under 29 years old. So that means, if you're good at math, that means 50% of the audience are over 29 years old. So it's not just a place for young people, although it's something that we associate with just near the youngest and perhaps coolest generation. It's something that a lot of older people are getting on as well, because there's lots of value there as well. It's not just cat videos and dance challenges. There's scientists posting content, there's doctors posting content, and I think careers leaders should be up there as well.
Excellent. So thinking about, let's shift just a tiny bit. How are we engaging, whether we do it via social media or other things, how can we engage young people in these careers conversations better? I've got a Gen Alpha here at home today. He's making a lot of noise.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Like I said, I can share a little bit more about engagement. So one of the things that I find really fascinating with a lot of young people is that what they know about careers already is quite small, but it's the same stuff that is stereotypically known. So if you're a young person thinking of work for the first time, you know about the jobs like doctor and teacher and lawyer, but you might not know about some of the niche ones. I'm yet to meet a 10-year-old that says, I want to become a leakage inspector when I grow up, or a technical solicitor. Those kind of things, very niche almost, but they're still popular jobs. So the first thing that we can do, and even in careers, I suppose, is make it really clear and plant that seed about different jobs that exist. I ran recently a sort of series of videos where I was talking about loads of different jobs that you can do with certain degrees, trying to sort of break those stereotypical norms of, if you study history, you have to go work in a museum. It's not necessarily the case. So the first thing that we can do is share, okay, what actually is a career coach? Because most people under the age of 18 haven't heard of that job before. So what does it look like? What do they do? How do they help? And one fun way I've seen people doing this is by giving similar examples. So you might say, I'm a career coach. That's kind of like a soccer coach would help a soccer player become a better soccer player, then earn a better salary and work for a better team. But I do that with young people in careers. I help them get promotions to earn more money to play for a better team. So you can use that to tap into what young people already know. Okay, I already know what a football coach is. I already know what a teacher is. I already know maybe what a recruiter is. How do you fit into that landscape, which I've already heard of? So you can use those relevant points as well. One other thing that I've been sort of thinking of a lot more recently as well is the idea that sharing more about the person you are, more about who you are, and maybe being a little bit more niche actually really helps to attract the right kind of talent you want to work with. And you might think that sharing a lot more personal stuff sort of refines who you could work with. But for example, mentioning when I talk about the work I do as an entrepreneur, for example, talking about the struggles I've had as an entrepreneur have helped me connect with other people that are entrepreneurs that think the same thing. I was recording with a client the other week about careers in the legal industry, legal services. And one of the people I was interviewing shared a really insightful thing that I think we can all share and all take something away from. And she was saying that because of the stutter she has, she didn't think she could become a solicitor. She thought that, she doesn't sound like a solicitor. And I'm certain that for all young people that were watching that piece of content that maybe have a stutter or speech impediment of their own, all of a sudden they've said, oh, she's like me. And now I'm considering careers as a solicitor is something I could do if I wanted. So when we share those personal and sometimes vulnerable bits about us, it actually makes us far more open to other people that are saying, oh, that career coach is like me. Is that someone I can work with? Oh, they come from the same area as me. They've got the same English accent as me. Those kind of things make it really easy for people to relate to you. So those are just a few ideas of how you can better engage young people using digital content like videos or workshops or even social media.
I love it. Yeah, and Gary was asking about that, and I know we'll talk about it more as well. But it doesn't have to be. I think the thing with video, especially, is that we talk ourselves out of it because we think it needs to take a ton of time. We've got to do these special edits, or that we have to look or sound a specific way, and just it's hard to get over those things. And I do teach people, do what fits for you, do what comes as part of your strengths. And they say we all got to challenge ourselves a little bit, because if we're not doing video, we're missing out on such an opportunity to connect with people. So yes, we can do what our strengths are, but then you want to figure out what is the best way for you to do video interviews. Then it's less of you in front of the camera. You can use them, you can take clips. There's a lot of screenshot type videos that people are doing, and those can work. It doesn't have to be you trying to be funny or trying to dance or any of those things. There's a lot of different ways that you can engage people with that medium of video, although I do think your face on it provides a lot of strength. If you don't want to start there, there's definitely other ways that you can do it. But we are just, you were talking about like Netflix, and people just consume video. And if we're not part of that medium, we're just not getting consumed, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I suppose the one thing I would say for everyone out there is, if you've worked with a client over the last week or last month and you've asked them to step out of their comfort zone, then I suppose it's something you need to try as well, even if it's just for 5 or 10 videos, because you're learning that skill and you're breaking that sort of barrier down. I mean, that's what I did when I first started posting on social media about my work. I said, I'll do 10 videos. I'm not really sure if that's the sort of stuff I want to do. And 2 years later, I've got like a video production company called Authentic Engagement. Like, how does that work? But yeah, like you said, you can really tailor the way you want to do it. Like for me, for example, I'm not trendy, I'm not cool. I just talk like this to camera. I know some people that do almost like you're a fly on the wall in a conversation. They're like turning to the side, talking to someone that's not there. Other people that do this screenshot type of stuff where they're typing text with music. Whatever works for you. But yeah, certainly trying it and giving it a go, because like you mentioned, digital content, things like Netflix, social media, TV, it's now the leading influencing factor of young people's career aspirations. So more so than conversations with your parents or stuff you might see out in the world, young people are becoming inspired by what they're seeing digitally. So if we're not putting the work that we do out there, and if you're an employer and if you've got challenges with your talent pipeline and you're not doing relevant and engaging content to get young people thinking about your careers, you're just putting yourself at a massive disadvantage now. I find that a lot of the content is either one or the other, right? It's really educational, but not necessarily fun to watch. Think of it as like a, I don't know, hour and a half Zoom call that hasn't been edited down or anything, and no music. And which for young people, you're not going to expect them to watch all of that. Alternatively, you're looking at stuff that's really engaging but not necessarily relevant. So maybe that's a TV program about law, like Suits, for example, which isn't exactly what working in law is like. It's fun to
Oh,
watch.
are you sure?
So we're just trying to meet them somewhere in the middle. So whether it's short content that touches on a key point, whether you're speaking in a relevant and engaging way, just trying to find some middle ground between what's engaging and what's relevant, so that we can really get young people on board with careers that they never heard of or services that they've never considered using before.
Well, and it's interesting. So I was at an agricultural conference, and I was talking about social media and using social media at the conference. That was my presentation topic. And some of the companies there were either on TikTok or they'd seen other companies in that industry on TikTok. And you would think, you have to be a certain kind of company, but they were doing TikToks about farm life, like hashtag farm life, right? And they were making videos, their employees were making videos about their day on the farm, their day at the facility, whether that's a dairy or whatever facility they had. And they were getting a lot of content put out there on TikTok, and they were getting followers, they're getting engagement, they're getting employees. So for us, even coaching our job seekers, we tend to think, if you're job seeking, LinkedIn is the only game in town. But there's also an opportunity because employers are trying to use these platforms, there's an opportunity for job seekers to connect with companies on these platforms. And then, the more we get exposed to these things as career coaches, the more we get engaged, then it also opens doors for our job seekers in other ways, which is just fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that's becoming really clear to me now is that especially when industries get on sites like TikTok, you mentioned like the agricultural and farming industry, it makes it really clear to young people what that job entails, what it's actually like, more or less, compared to maybe what you've read or what pictures you've seen. And it enables you to keep in touch for a longer period of time. I don't know anyone that's made an impulsive career decision, especially about long-term stuff. You think it through. You need to be maybe exposed to a lot of content. You do a lot of research. So, one video is not going to change your life. But seeing 3 videos every week, you might start to understand, oh, that's what farmers do. Oh, they're like this. They use this skill, which I'm really good at. Oh, I didn't know that about farming. So that sort of compounding really helps to engage young people that might have never before said, yeah, I want to be a farmer, because maybe they didn't have the links in their family. They didn't know anyone that did that. And so especially in those careers that seem underrepresented, or that historically you had to know someone in the publishing industry to get into the publishing industry, we're breaking those barriers down now because the content is out there. It's more accessible. And yeah, it's one thing that young people can see, ask their own questions of as well, and sort of see what it's actually like.
Tell me a little bit more about how you're working with employers, or what employers are doing on this, because it's so helpful for us as career services providers to see what they're doing too.
Yeah. So one of the projects I'm just finishing up at the moment, actually, we're working. So rather than putting content on TikTok or social media, we're creating TikTok for schools. We're creating this sort of video content that is engaging young people where they are. So even though they're in schools, we promise not to make it really boring. But the key thing for us is to connect subjects that young people are taking with careers that exist that aren't maybe historically related. So like I said earlier, history, if you study history, most people think you're going to have to work in a museum, right? But actually the skills you learn in history, like being able to sort of analyze text, understand who's speaking and what point of view they're speaking from, that's really useful in the legal industry, when people might be saying something from their point of view and you've got to weigh up, who's right, what's actually the truth here. Similar with English, for example, you might think, oh, being English just means I have to be an author or I work in journalism. But actually, content writers that copyright for websites and try to persuade people, they use that English skill loads. So for these subjects that young people are taking, they're really familiar with, they might know whether they like them or not, is connecting them with jobs that they've probably never heard of before and meeting them in the middle with that skill set. What skills do you actually use? Well, is it communication that you use, and how might you use that in your lesson? Is it technical skills that you use? How might you use that in your lesson? So breaking down that barrier for young people that probably haven't heard of the majority of the jobs that exist, but getting them to think, oh, I'm quite good at English. I like using that leadership skill that I use in PE or whatever it is. And then saying, well, here's a job that uses that skill as well, that subject could be really useful for. So that's a big project I'm doing with employers at the moment, so that they can meet young people where they are with something that is educationally valuable, and then sort of lead those young people towards early career opportunities as well.
Yeah, and you talked about this earlier, that you're looking at even job descriptions and how do they make job descriptions talk about skills and talk about how people might have used those skills in their schoolwork versus just the way that they would talk about it on the job. And employers, I've talked to a lot of employers that hire young professionals, and I think the recruiters always got that, but maybe the employer didn't. So the job description written by the hiring manager was just removed, right? It was weird and the student didn't get it. And it was up to the on-campus recruiter to translate that. So I love that you're talking to employers about, hey, let's fix these job descriptions if you really want to attract young people, to include the skills that they are comfortable with.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose this maybe goes back to what I mentioned earlier about some job descriptions are really boring. They're overwhelming you with stuff like, oh, fast-paced and dynamic environment or whatever that means. And on the other hand, you've got job descriptions that try really hard to make the job sound fun, which is dangerous, because if you're hiring people that just think the job's going to be really fun for everyone, you lose retention as well. You hire someone that a month later says, whoa, this isn't what I thought it was. So again, finding that middle ground of making it relevant and engaging. If you're talking about the skills and then making that engaging to a young person, you're more likely to not only qualify the right people, but get people to then apply. So what does that look like as an example? Well, say you're looking for an accountant or entry-level accountant, something like that. Saying, for example, okay, you need to be really organized for this. It's not just about maths, but then when might they have used that organization skill in the last sort of 5 years, especially if you're a young person that doesn't have work experience? Where am I supposed to find if I'm an organizational person? So maybe you're the type of person that really loves going through your wardrobe and organizing things in color order, right? That might mean you're the type of person that might be good at this job or might have the right kind of skills. Or if you're looking for like a leadership position in your organization from a young person stepping up from entry level, well, how am I supposed to know if I'm a good leader as a young person if I've never used that skill before? Or maybe when I was playing in the soccer team, they made me captain, and you actually really enjoyed that. You enjoyed motivating people and not necessarily being the star of the team. Hey, you might become a really good leader. So finding those places where for young people that maybe haven't had work experience or aren't as experienced in their careers, how do you make these skills relatable? Because again, they might not have heard of them. They might not know what resilience is. So how do you break that down and say, here's something you might have already done that would say you're a resilient person? I think doing that makes it not only more interesting for young people to read, it lets them understand, this job that I've never heard of sounds like it could be right for me.
Yeah. And I just think as you're saying that, as a career coach, and especially, in a career services center or in an independent practitioner, how do we make sure our language is connecting to young people? Now, I know a lot of independent practitioners may not focus that young, but even when you're talking, the millennials who are now 36 to 46 or whatever, 30 to 40, even those age groups, they're leaders in their organization. They've got C-level titles, but they still speak a little different language than Gen X or boomers. And if we're not thinking about our connection to that group we might find ourselves with fewer clients because they're aging out of our services and the way that we're used to connecting to people. So think about that too for us, that if we're not on these platforms, if we're not doing video, I hear a lot of people say, oh, I work with executives and they aren't on those platforms. That's not true. And the younger executives are. So if we want that longevity in our business, we need to start connecting with people who are in that, at least millennial age group, maybe even younger, so that they are coming in. And like you said, they understand what career services are and value that. And they're only going to do that if we start having those conversations now.
Exactly. Yeah, we're moving to meet people where they are. So if people are online, then hey, guess what? For the last 20 years, we've been moving all of our stuff online.
Right.
If they're on social media, if they're on LinkedIn, yeah, we're going to go there as well. So you can narrow that down for whatever your target audience is. Like I say, I use about 2 social media for my work. You could use all of them if you want, but I'm more focused on being effective. And for me, that's TikTok and LinkedIn, because I know that's where things happen. But like I said, it depends largely on your audience as well. But fundamentally, if we focus on engagement, we're capturing those people that we know we can serve. So that's our target audience. But they don't necessarily know they need us right now, even though they do. So again, I go back to that 70% of young people that aren't engaged in their careers. How much more beneficial would it be if they could get that next promotion, or if they could find a job that isn't terrible for their mental health? That they would love that. I'm certain they would. But they aren't connecting the dots that actually I need a career coach to get that, or even that I want to do that and I want to take the steps, even though I don't know what the steps are. So yeah, starting with engagement, and then everything else comes secondary. The sites you use, the places you're visible, the marketing, that all comes afterwards.
Well, you just made me remember. So tomorrow I'm doing a session on how to speak to your target audience, how to identify them, how to really understand them. And it's amazing now the AI tools that we can use to help us do that. So that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow on this session. You just made me think of that because we were talking about that. But then, as we said earlier, you're also coming to speak in Lisbon, talking about this to our career services provider audience. So tell me why someone would want to come to Lisbon. What will they learn from your session there?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming to Lisbon, apart from meeting everyone from the Career Thought Leader group, I suppose the thing you'll take away from mine is, firstly, why we need to focus on engagement first. And when I talk about engagement, I don't mean likes and follows and that kind of stuff. I mean creating a change in behavior. So for a young person, that could be, I don't want to work. I'm not interested in that. 2, I want to get my first job. Or that could be, I'm just sort of happy where I am, even though like I've got some challenges. 2, okay, I want to get promoted. I want to do work that I'm really good at and that I find fulfilling. How do we create that change in behavior? Because like I said, so many people are stuck in career ruts. So many people are unhappy with the work they do, but they say they want to change, but they're not willing to do the work. So how do we change their behavior? And I find that a lot of marketing, a lot of stuff that's aimed at young people is all about grabbing attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about how maybe this generation has got a short attention span, or maybe we say that they're lazy. So everything out there is about grabbing attention. But when it comes to careers, when it comes to finding the work you want to do, you don't do that based off grabbing attention. You don't do that off impulse. It's a very long, drawn out, thoughtful decision that a young person makes, that anyone makes. So rather than grabbing attention, we need engagement. We need to create a change in behavior. And if you come to my session in Lisbon, you'll find out how to do that.
I'm so excited. Yay. Well, Gary, I'm excited for you to get involved in this conversation, especially when we get there. I agree, right? The leaders of today, they get younger because they are the next leaders. They're the next coming up. We talk about, the silver tsunami and people starting to retire, which I think is happening more in some ways in Europe than it is here in the US, but it is happening here in the US as well. And so we're going to need to work with younger people finally as that starts to happen. I know the young people have been ready for that, ready to be able to find those opportunities as people move on, retire, become consultants. I don't know that they're necessarily retiring in the previous definition of that word, but it just provides more opportunity for us to keep helping those people that semi-retire, and then to help these new leaders, or they've been in leadership roles, but now they're going to get the opportunity to take the step up. And then finally, which I think Gen Z is really excited about, right? Finally, the millennials will get to their chance to move up, and that will open up opportunities for Gen Z as well. I think we're all hopeful that the amount of jobs that are being created and the amount of people who are not retiring but stepping back, it's going to create some opportunity for everyone in the workspace. I'm sure you talk with young people who are also maybe disappointed at the opportunities available, and how do they navigate that in addition to the career challenges?
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose this is one of the, I suppose if I'm honest, one of the concerns I have with what seems like so few young people engaged in their careers or looking for that promotion at next step, or even feeling like that opportunity is available to them. I do worry, yeah, who's going to fill these roles that are sort of being made vacant, or these opportunities that I see coming up. I mean, certainly in the UK and England, for example, we've got what's called a massive skill shortage, which means that we don't have the people to step up into those more senior roles or more technical roles, because of lack of engagement, because we're not engaging young people in early careers in industries that they haven't heard of before. So yeah, that's one thing I'm sort of thinking of a lot. But I suppose if you're the sort of person that's thinking of that too, or maybe for businesses that are considering that, that's something I really want to focus on in Lisbon. How do we engage those young people to become that talent pipeline of the future, so that when these roles are available, or certainly made clear that they're available, we've got the right talent to step into those roles?
Yeah. And it's a challenge for those of us in the career space, and especially those who work with high schoolers and college, early college. How do you prepare people for careers that don't exist yet, for a career space that it's evolving so quickly? And yet it could be exciting if we had the conversation and we were engaged. Then it could be an exciting opportunity instead of a daunting challenge, right? It all comes to the preparation and a little bit your mindset, but the preparation as well.
Yeah, exactly. I read a statistic. I mean, this is a few years ago now, but the idea was that 85% of jobs that will exist in 2030 haven't been invented yet. You know, they're new jobs that will exist, or changing roles. So yeah, how do you inspire young people? I mean, one thing that I've seen, and from the work I used to do as a school speaker, is that people used to think saying that your future job doesn't exist yet, used to think that was really inspiring. But I think for a lot of young people, that's actually quite scary. That makes you feel quite anxious. The job I'm doing, you know, in 5-10 years time doesn't exist yet. Well, how am I supposed to prepare for that? So I think defaulting to the skills that will always be useful for, I'm going to say humans, even in the age of AI, but in lots of jobs going forward as well, building that resilience that I'm sure so many young people have because of the COVID pandemic that happened 3 years ago, that they don't even know about. They don't know they've got those skills. Thinking of things like working with people, which will most likely always be important, helping young people understand where they've done that, where they're good at that, maybe where they could do with a bit more work. So yeah, careers coaches, careers leaders can always help looking at those skills, rather than necessarily saying, here's the job you want to do and here's the skills you'll need, rather than saying, yeah, here's the skills that will always be useful. And if you get those skills, you can have this job or this job or this job or this job, and even the ones that don't exist as well.
Yeah, that's just funny because yesterday, after we got done with our conversation, I recorded a short video on career durability and the 6 skills for career durability. And well, that's a topic for another time. But I agree, we need to be thinking about those skills that you'll need in any job. And then how do you get one of those 6 is hard skills, the specific skills for the job you want. And that's just one of the 6. So you've got all these other areas. And then of course your hard skills are going to continue to evolve. And then Nancy was saying that she works with baby boomers. So I know, Nancy, you're joining us tomorrow. You already signed up to join us tomorrow for this session on where you market to them. Neurodiversity. So I think that this is engagement and behavior change, and part of what we're all doing. And of course, we know that the neurodiversity has become something people are more aware of. But I think this challenge too of when you have less structure, then you need to create that for yourself. And I see that happening in careers. So there's less structure in careers. You don't have a ladder. And so we've got to create that structure for ourselves, and we need help doing that. And there's more and more people, career services providers in general, and then specific for those who are neurodiverse, to help them create that structure that they might need for themselves, whether they're working virtually or they're in job search or they're thinking long-term about their career. And now they have to do that for themselves. And it can be more challenging for some than for others.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the latest things that I've seen as well in England is that about 70% of young people, for example, with autism are unemployed or not in work. So the challenge there is, okay, you've got this massive pool of what is potential talent that could be in your industry, providing their insight. And, you know, some people would say that neurodiverse people have like special superpowers as well. But I think ultimately you've got so many people that want to work, that want to find fulfillment in the work they do, and you're not engaging them because either your job description is not accessible, or because it's really unclear what that job might entail. So a lot of people say, oh, I'm not sure about that, I'm going to back off. And I think, yeah, the rise in neurodiversity has made companies start to assess this and say, actually, are the resources we're providing accessible? Do they make sense? And like you mentioned, if you've got one hiring manager writing your job description, and everyone that doesn't think like them is going to find it hard to sort of process that and feel like, yeah, that's the role for me. So just like I mentioned earlier with the filming I've been doing, where a young person says, because I've got a stutter, I didn't think I could be a solicitor. That makes it really easy for other young people that have speech impediments to say, yeah, that's something I could do. We can do the same with neurodiversity as well. And I've seen certainly in England, a company called Amazing Apprenticeships have helped to create video resources that do just that, showing different people in different careers that are neurodiverse, talking about how they got into those roles, and sort of how their neurodiversity fits, whether there's changes that they've had to make or changes that the company's made, so that other companies can do that as well.
Yeah, that's very helpful to find those mentors, to find those people. And thankfully, more people are sharing their stories on social media and other places that allow us to do that. So if you are thinking about registering for Lisbon, now is the time. So the early bird deadline ends on December 20th. December 20th is the early bird deadline. And very cool, you're going to hear it here first. I'll announce this on Thursday. But when people register for the symposium by December 20th, they're also going to get access to our Career Industry Authority membership up until the end of April, because it's a community and we're there and we're engaged. And we want you to be a part of the community, not just in Lisbon, but beyond. So you'll get access to our Career Industry Authority membership with all of the sessions that we do and everything included until the end of April. So it's kind of an awesome bonus for people who register by the early bird deadline. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jake. And I can't wait to see you in person in Lisbon. And I'm excited to continue the conversation about video and young people. I saw a suggestion in the comments that we do some more things on creating video. So we'll put that on the schedule for 2024 as well. So thank you, everyone. And we will see you next Tuesday for our Trend Tuesday Live.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Marie. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you.